Very excited. Joining me right now in studio, 8th grader Jacob Schultz. He wrote a great, I call it an essay, if you will, called The Law of the Land. He's joining us tonight in studio. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah,
I love what you did. For people that haven't read this piece yet, let people know what it's about and what was the inspiration behind it.
Well, I always like to talk about the Constitution because that's the way our government was instituted and the way it's supposed to work. And I really think it would solve a lot of the problems we're having today if we could go back to it. So I just wanted to get the word out about how this is supposed to work so that people actually know when the government's doing things it doesn't have the authority to do.
Was there any particular inspiration behind this? You've always had a knack for American history, or what?
Yeah, that too, but my interest in the Constitution really started when my sister did a National History Day presentation about the Constitution. And so then a few years later, I did a Constitution presentation at the 4-H speech contest. And then this was the next speech I did. And I really had a lot of help from Jake McCauley at the American View. He helped me get my information together, fact-checked my speech afterwards, so that was really helpful.
So did you go to your parents to go, oh my gosh, I've got this unbelievable affinity for the U.S. Constitution, or your mom and dad kind of going, hey, you need to know this, or how did this all come about?
I did the Constitution speech, and I really liked doing that. And so then I said, well, I can't do the same speech again at the speech contest. So, well, I'll do the best thing, actually. I'll just talk about the law and how it's supposed to be made, because this information needs to get out, and not enough people know.
So you said there's some problems going on right now, meaning that our country is not necessarily following the Constitution. What are some of the biggest things that you see are the issues?
Well, I think it comes from, we have 2 presidencies worth of war powers that have never been given up. From Lincoln, he took war powers and he never gave those up, most likely because he was assassinated. And then FDR also took special war powers, and those never were given up either. So we just ended up with a bunch of war powers that are still in use when there's no crisis going on anymore. And so then the government just basically does what it wants. And since people don't really know what the Constitution says anymore, they don't hold the government accountable. So they really can do what they want if no one cares.
It's called the D.C. swamp for a reason, right?
Yep.
We're going to post this piece online so you can read it in its entirety. But one of the things that really jumped out to me, and I want to have you speak to this, is you said, and I'm quoting him here, finally, how many of you still believe that the Supreme Court decisions are the law of the land? And you go on to say, they really aren't. They're simply opinions. And you go on to the Dred Scott decision. I think it was the Buck versus Bell, Obergefell versus Hodges one. Walk us through the idea that, hey, what the Supreme Court says is simply an opinion, not the law of the land.
So the idea is Congress makes a law. I say that in my speech. Congress has all the legislative powers. It's all vested there. But the Supreme Court looks at it and says, okay, does this follow the Constitution, and does it follow the law of nature, and nature's God? So the law of nature is, we're man, we're woman, you can't outlaw gravity and then you'll just float. So that's the law of nature, and the law of nature's God is the 10 Commandments as revealed to us in the Scriptures. So the Supreme Court looks at the law Congress made and they say, does it follow the Constitution and the law of nature and nature's God? And if it doesn't, well, then it isn't law in the first place, because in order to be law, you have to follow the law of nature and nature's God.
But walk me through more of, like, for example, with the same-sex marriage decision that came out. What you're saying is, hey, that's not really actually a law.
No.
That's just simply an opinion of mortal men.
Because it's against the law of nature, and it's against the law of nature's God. And it's against the Constitution, because no one has a constitutional right to be married, whether you're traditional marriage or non-traditional marriage. It's just not a constitutional right, because that's not...
But obviously they said in the decision via the 14th Amendment, because of equality, it is a constitutional right.
Yeah, they said so, but as we know, the Supreme Court doesn't make the law, and since Congress didn't say that this is okay, the Supreme Court really shouldn't either.
I mean, I think you bring up some fascinating stuff. Even when you look what happened with Obamacare, and I don't remember with the justice, if you can help me understand that, but the justice said, well, let's just call this a tax. And like you said before, they can't even levy taxes with the Supreme Court, but did it anyways.
Yeah, so Congress is basically letting themselves be trodden over, because they should really start impeaching these justices that don't fulfill their responsibilities. I mean, it's a myth that they hold their position for life. They hold their position during good behavior, so as soon as you start violating the Constitution and overstepping your bounds, you should be impeached.
Wow. Anything else you want to add, sir?
Well, let's know what our Constitution says, know what the government should be doing, and hold them accountable when they don't follow it.
I felt smart till he showed up. Great to meet you, man.
Yeah,
Jake,
my
we
pleasure.
appreciate it.